Welcome. I am Kevin Price. Delighted to be with you. Going to talk to you about you and your business. And as usual, here on this Friday already, wow, time goes fast when you're having fun. I got so much to talk about, so I need to jump right straight into it. I'm going to do that with my friend Marc Krasney. Marc is an attorney and a great friend of this program, and one I've been very familiar with, both as a guest and as one who's worked with our company. I love what he does at the Krasney Law Firm. Marc, first of all, get started by kind of giving us your elevator speech and also your website for the Krasney Law Firm.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, Kevin. What we did back in 2007 was start a firm that acts like an in-house counsel for small, medium-sized companies that can't afford to hire one full-time. And so they pay us on a monthly retainer-type fee, whether they use us or not, more like an insurance plan. And what we do is answer the phone calls. We review the documents. We draft whatever is necessary to make sure that the client, the business, stays in good rapport with whatever legal entity and gets the advice when the advice is needed, not after the fact. Mm-hmm. And, fast forward to 2014, we've been pretty successful and our clients are happy. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, no question. No question about it. We wanted to talk about non-competes, which is really important, and it's one of those very dicey things. A lot of these things are being done internally without a lawyer's thoughts, and they end up becoming ridiculous documents that would never hold up in court. But these documents can work, and they do have value. And so let's begin by just talking about what such a document is, and let's go from there.
Well, that's exactly what happens, and I think more so when business is good and it's really hard to find skilled employees. I get phone calls from owners who say, hey, I need a non-compete agreement to keep this guy. Okay, that's fine. It's a good place to start. Then we start asking a few questions, like what exactly are you trying to do? And usually what they want is to make sure if this guy leaves tomorrow, he can't work in this field for a year, 2 years, and they'll talk about whether it's Houston or Texas or sometimes even the entire country in whatever field, service, making widgets, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so then I reel them back in and say, now wait a second, owner, why is it now it's so important when this guy or woman has already worked for you for some time to get this person to sign a non-compete? And again they go, well, I don't want them to leave. Well, the big question in Texas, and I've argued 2 cases to the Court of Appeals here in Houston, the big issue in Texas, if I was the employee, is to ask, what do I get? So back to my fact pattern, if this person's worked for me for some time and all of a sudden I, the owner, say, here, sign this, what exactly did the employee get? Owner, would you give that employee to sign that? And absent anything, like we call it in the law, consideration, that employee agreement, that non-compete that you were so interested in getting is unenforceable. Mm-hmm. Now, also we'll get owners who will say, you know what, I don't really care about that. I just want to get them to sign something so it scares them. That happens probably 80% of the time. At least I hear that. And, we're not interested in getting, employees scared. We want to make sure that we have something that a year or 2 down the road when an employee does leave, wants to go to your competitor, wants to take some of your trade secrets, we have something to enforce. Because that's the beauty of a non-compete. We, the law firm, can go in and file a temporary restraining order, get a judge to sign an order that says, Kevin Price, you were my employee, you signed this agreement, you had significant, sufficient consideration. Until the temporary injunction hearing, you can't work in this field. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
In Texas, we don't want to keep anyone from not working, but you know what? If you went through the checklist and you signed this thing and the proper protocol was followed, I've seen it where the judge will say, you know what, until we actually have a trial on this, we're going to have to abide by the agreement you signed. Mm-hmm. So they're big deals.
Yeah,
and,
people have to take them seriously. Tell us what a ridiculous one of these looks like and what a good one looks like.
A ridiculous one would be something that people sign in their employment handbook, and in the handbook it says you can't work in this field for 3 years, and it's for the entire country, and it's for anything in whatever vague field, like telecom or in the trucking industry or in the radio industry. And so, I know that sounds kind of vague, but that's it. If the employment agreement, the covenant not to compete, is not specific as to a term, a geographical location, and the specific type of service that the person was doing, the court's most likely not going to enforce it. Mm-hmm. So say, for example, in your circumstance, your radio host, say there was something in there that said you can't compete in this field, and we're very specific about radio, or what type of radio you did, what market you were actually involved in, and if you're involved in just the North Houston market, well, that's what we're going to put in there. We're not going to put, the entire state of Texas or the entire country, and then we're not going to put in there, things that you specifically as an employee did not do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we try to get as specific as possible to that type of employee arrangement. And the last thing is we really focus on what consideration did the employee get? What did they actually receive from the employer to sign this document? And is that consideration new?
Mm-hmm.
So things that would work, trade secrets. But that's also a tricky, slippery slope because many employers will say, well, they get all the keys to my kingdom. They get to know exactly how everything has been done in my business, and I don't want them to take it. So they're getting my trade secrets. But if that employee's worked there for 6 months, a year, 2 years, well, they already have that stuff. Yeah. That's not new consideration.
So retribution obviously can't be the reason why, and holding someone hostage can't be the reason why. What are the values under? I guess you could say the underpin ideas behind this non-compete.
Well, when we get to the actual non-compete for a specific employee, the argument is that employee is incredibly valuable to my company. If that employee who has whatever skills and knowledge taught by my company leaves and goes to a competitor, it's going to crush my business. That's the typical mindset of an owner. And so if, in fact, that employee goes to a competitor and takes whatever skills learned or has, that competitor could take business, and that competitor becomes a much more strong company over the one where the employee signed the non-compete. That's usually the biggest argument we get.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good one, but employers need to really consult an attorney, sit down and fully discuss the reasons and get to the meat of what actually has to be done and what consideration do we give the employee.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being with us. I appreciate it. You can learn more about Marc Krasney at Krasney, Krasney, lawfirm.com, KrasneyLawFirm.com. I'm Kevin Price. You're listening to The Price of Business.